What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we joined by Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks, as the Atlanta Hawks are riding a 5-game win streak, including some impressive wins against the Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets. What has been the cause of the turnaround for the Atlanta Hawks? Will we see John Collins play again this season? But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because look, when it comes to protein bars, you've got to check out Built Bar. They are the number one protein bar on the market. So many incredible flavors to choose from. You got raspberry, strawberry, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, mint brownie, my personal favorite, coconut brownie chunk. You really can't go wrong with a single bar on their menu. Every single bar is coated in 100% delicious chocolate. Every bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit, lose a little bit of weight. You can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Joining us now is Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks. You can follow on Twitter at BT Rowland. Now, Brad, the Hawks have managed, a 5-game win streak as of late, and most recently holding off the Brooklyn Nets despite 55 from KD, a 30-piece from Kyrie. How pivotal was this most recent win for the Hawks, given the seeding perspective and the play-in implications surrounding this game, giving them now a full game cushion ahead of the Nets and the Charlotte Hornets?
It was definitely a big one for sure. I mean, this 5-game winning streak for the Hawks has changed their season. Obviously, they could have made the playoffs coming from 10 or number 9 in the play-in, but it's much easier to avoid that 9-10 matchup if you can do it. Just playing the math, playing the odds, and not having to do one and done to potentially end your season. And that head-to-head win against Brooklyn, particularly with the Nets coming into Atlanta, it would have been pretty brutal for the Hawks to lose that game, really more than anything else at home. They've been so good at home this season that having KD do that and also be able to overcome it is kind of a good sort of data point for the Hawks to just overcome adversity and just pull out a win that they had to have.
What's generally been different over this recent 5-game win streak? Anything new that you're seeing out of this Hawks team, especially with some impressive wins against the Golden State Warriors? We talked about the win against the Nets. Anything different that you're seeing out of this team as we're headed into the postseason right around the corner?
It's been more consistent, I think, is the biggest thing. Throughout this season, the Hawks have been tantalizing. They've had all of these good wins, and then they turn around and have a bad loss that's kind of just inexplicable, and they let down. And there's been some of that buzz that this team just sort of overachieved last season, and they got a little bit bored with regular season, that kind of stuff. And I think that just kind of being more level, being more consistent, being more mature and professional, and just kind of taking care of business night in, night out has been big. And this team is still prone to the occasional off night. They lost to Detroit recently. They lost at home to New Orleans recently. But I think the schedule being very favorable to the Hawks has also helped them. Early in the year, they lost some of those games for sure. But coming on the stretch, I kind of pointed out this a lot of times. Like, look, this is right there for the Hawks because they had all these easy games coming up at home. And to their credit, they've won almost all of them. And that's really been the biggest thing. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of different stuff. They're not 100% healthy, but they're really only missing one guy right now in John Collins. So that's been a little bit of camaraderie, a little bit of sort of connectedness as well to keep this team together. But it's really a little bit from a lot of different columns.
Over this recent 5-game stretch, Trae Young's been sensational all season long. That's just who he is on the basketball floor. But over this recent 5-game stretch, he's basically like 31-12 on a nightly basis. Very good efficiency. Everything you come to expect from Trae. So I'm curious, Brad, do you attribute some of the struggles this season, right? Is it on Trae? Is it on the team as a collective? Is it some individuals not necessarily living up to the roles that they played last season? Is there something you can point to? I know you mentioned consistency, but something that is different specifically, with the version of the Atlanta Hawks we're seeing this year versus the version that was, such an incredible story last season?
I think just broadly speaking is the defense. I think last year they weren't great defensively for most of the season, but in the second half, they were a top 10, 12 defense in the entire league when they got red hot. And this year, they've been living in the bottom 5 for most of the season. That's how bad they have been. If anything, they're better on offense this year, which is kind of crazy to think about the way they made that run last season. But they've been in the top 2 or 3 on offense all year long, just really lighting it up behind Trae and what is a pretty high-powered group with shooting around him and some, Capella and Okongwu and Collins diving into the rim. But defensively, it's really been a lot of the same, but also a little bit worse. Like Capella has come on really strong recently. I think he's been a big part of the turnaround because he's been playing elite basketball defensively. But early in the year, he was just pretty good rather than actually dominant. And last year, he made everything go for that defense. This is a team that does not have a ton of defensive talent. So I think it's really the defensive end of the floor. I think it's crazy as it's going to sound. Trae's having his best season of his career pretty clearly by the numbers, by the play, by his just not in, not out contributions. And I know it's not resulted in wins necessarily, which is kind of taking him off the radar, but he's been fantastic. I think that it's not really on him really at all. It's kind of the supporting pieces and having issues defensively throughout the season, but they've kind of shown their upside in this recent stretch.
I know you mentioned just momentarily there about John Collins, but what is the latest news on him, and is, how severe is the injury holding him out, and what's the hopes as far as like getting him back into the rotation either before the playoffs start, or if there is a deep playoff run for this Hawks team, or if they get out of the play and into the first round, like is there an expectation that he's going to be back and around for that?
There's a lot of mystery. It's kind of weird because he has two injuries at once. He has the original and more serious injury is a plantar fascia tear in his right foot, which is bothering him for sure. He tried to play through it, was not the same guy. It was certainly holding him back. It was very clear, and he's a guy that needs his burst to be effective. And also, he has this right finger sprain where it really kind of bubbled up on him, and it was looking very, very gross. And it's on his shooting hand. It's kind of this two-pronged injury. And they gave this update over the weekend. It was kind of a non-update. It's one of those updates that they give because they have to give one. But it was just like absolutely no specifics. The Hawks have been pretty mysterious about this whole thing. So I've been saying for a while, I'll be surprised if he plays in the regular season. Obviously, it's only 1 week to go. But I think they're leaving the door open in case they make a run that he can come back. I think if they were to go out quietly in the play-in or lose in the first round, it won't surprise me at all if he doesn't play anymore this year. But if they get a good matchup in the first round, pull an upset, that's 2-3 weeks from now, and that gives him a lot more time to kind of get right. So I think that if I had to guess right now, he's probably done for the year, but that's just a total guess. They're not really giving any information out, but just because of all the mysteriousness, he's not really running at this point as well. And for a guy to go from not running to playing an NBA game is not a small thing. He's going to need a couple of days, weeks to get ramped up all the way. So I think the smart bet is he doesn't play again this year, but obviously we're all guessing.
Definitely kind of a huge blow to this Atlanta Hawks team not having John Collins out there. Who has stepped up in his absence, though, for this team?
It's really been a lot of different guys, but Danilo Gallinari has been great offensively. This year it's been kind of the exact Gallinari experience that you might imagine at this point in his career. Defensively, it's really an adventure, and he does hurt them in certain matchups. But offensively, he's fantastic. He's a great shooter, matchup stuff. When he plays in this recent stretch, they've been very, very good. The problem is that he's been banged up as well. So they missed both him and Collins, and they're very, very shorthanded at the four. They got a little bit of a flash from Jalen Johnson, their rookie, but then he got a concussion right away after that, unfortunately. So they kind of been piecing it together with DeAndre Hunter playing the four and Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot playing the four. He's really more of a combo wing, and he's been playing a lot of 4 minutes. They've been playing small because they have to. They're just kind of out of bodies at the four when Gallinari's not out there. But it's really been a team effort. And really the big thing is that Capella, I know he's playing center and would have been playing with Collins, but he's been playing out of his world for the last, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And that's been sort of covering up a little bit of the absences of Collins. I do think, though, this team is not the same without Collins. They've been winning recently, and I think that's kind of been masked because they've been winning. But long-term and in the playoffs, they need Collins. He's their best defender at the four. He's a really good offensive player, and he does a lot of things that nobody else can match.
It'll be curious to see how far this Atlanta Hawks team can go without John Collins. But Brad, last thing here before I let you go. I mean, if the playoffs were to start today, the Hawks would find themselves matched up with the Cleveland Cavaliers as part of the first part of the play-in bracket. What does that potential play-in encounter look like from the Hawks' perspective as far as that matchup is concerned?
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously Cleveland's been banged up for a while now without Jared Allen, and Ivan Mobley's been out. And if those guys aren't playing, then they're just not a playoff caliber team, to be honest with you. I mean, that's not even a picking on Cleveland. They've been awesome this year, but the Hawks, they just came to Atlanta last week, and the Hawks beat them up pretty good. And it felt like they were just a lot better than Cleveland in their current form. And obviously, maybe they get Jared Allen back, maybe they get Evan Mobley back before the play-in. But if it's that team without those guys, then I think the Hawks have to be favored, maybe even on the road in that game. Obviously, home court would be big because the Hawks have been a lot worse on the road than they have at home, as a lot of teams are this year. But I think a big thing is that Cleveland has not been there before as a playoff team in this current iteration, and the Hawks had that whole experience of last year, and they know what it takes. I think they're the more talented team when compared to Cleveland. Obviously, it's a one-game scenario. Anything can happen, and you don't want to have to go on the road in that game. But that's the big thing about being in the 7-8 is that then you have two chances. Where you don't want to be is in the 9-10, where you have one bad night from Trae Young and your season's over. In the 7-8, you wish you have two shots at it, and I think the Hawks can be pretty confident as a result.
Yeah, will John Collins see the floor again this season? Can the Hawks fight their way out of the play-in and have a either surprising first round playoff series? Maybe they make a deep run. You're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Hawks. Brad, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.